I've known you since the college days, and what stood out for me back then was that you were not just a nerd in a class full of brilliant students. You were always the first one to say yes to fun, yes to mischief, yes to bunking classes and catching up on movies. But when it came to the results, you always scored the perfect scores. Then you went on to secure rank 2 at RVCE for the state of Karnataka in computer science engineering, and then went on to become an AI researcher at the Indian Institute of Science.
It's very important to have fun with anything you do, whether it's about education, whether it's your professional life. What's life without fun, right? At the end of the day, you have to be enjoying what you do on a day-to-day basis. A lot of discipline and rigor from my academic institutions. I didn't just learn how to solve a problem. I also understood how to ask the right questions that will eventually lead me to find the right answers.
So, Aditi, you worked across various sectors as a product management leader, Meta, Uber, Stellantis, Walmart. So, you've explored very different sectors. You've not limited yourself to, one particular segment, right? Was this a conscious decision to diversify your experience?
I think it was a conscious decision for me to focus on building products in different industries, whether it's, e-commerce at Walmart, or whether it's mobility at Uber and Stellantis now, or at Meta where I focused on social. I felt like every experience I was learning different industries. It constantly kept me on a learning curve. At the same time, for me, it was also what I could take from one industry and push to the other. You have been in, the legal space for a while. Have you seen a lot of AI being used these days?
I was actually surprised, Aditi. I started my legal journey with Infosys, right? I have been reviewing contracts, these huge documents, sometimes running to hundreds of pages. And I would be like, why is this still not automated? And this is a question I asked 10, 15 years ago.
I'm sure a lot of the product managers are listening to this right
Yes.
now.
So I think that's actually a very good space to innovate, in the legal tech space.
I wouldn't say we are still on par right now in India compared to the Valley.
Right.
But it's certainly the trajectory is getting there, right? For me, personally, I feel like the next 15, 20 years is really about India. It's really about bringing even stronger product culture here, building some even more amazing products here.
If you had to bet on one AI leader, Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, or Elon Musk, who would it be and why?
Why is Sam Altman not in the list?
Today, we are in conversation with Adithi Sampath, who is a global product leader with over 2 decades of experience across Silicon Valley and Bangalore. She has built and scaled large consumer products, leading teams at Meta, Uber, Walmart, and Microsoft. Aditi is currently the Vice President of Product Management for software at Stellantis, one of the world's top 5 car manufacturers. She holds an MBA from the University of Southern California and a bachelor's degree in computer science from RV College of Engineering. Hi, Aditi, welcome. So tell us a bit about what you've been doing these days.
Kirti, thank you for having me here. On the professional side, I'm leading the product management organization at Stellantis today. Stellantis is one of the third largest car manufacturer in the world. And I recently transitioned out of Uber. On the personal side, I'm very excited to be back in Bangalore, closer to the family.
Right, so let's focus a bit on the years you grew up in Bangalore, right? You're from Bangalore, you're a true Bangalorean. So I've known you since the college days, and what stood out for me back then was that you were not just a nerd in a class full of brilliant students. You were always the first one to say yes to fun, yes to mischief, yes to bunking classes and catching up on movies. But when it came to the results, you always scored the perfect scores. Then you went on to secure rank 2 at RVCE for the state of Karnataka in computer science engineering, and then went on to become an AI researcher at the Indian Institute of Science, long before AI was the buzzword or is the buzzword it is today, right? So let me ask you this question. What do you think? What would you like to say to the folks who say that the current education system doesn't equip the students with the required life skills to succeed in life or in the career? Um, Considering how much you have accomplished, how much of all that you've accomplished would you attribute to your schooling system, RVCE? And how much of that actually just boils down to your own drive, ambition, and hard work?
First of all, like I think it's very important to have fun with anything you do, whether it's about education, whether it's your, professional life. What's life without fun, right? At the end of the day, you have to be enjoying what you do on a day-to-day basis. So that's probably what the reason why I started off the way I did and continue to do. For me to, back to your question, I think it's very important to have both, right? I think on one side, what I got personally was a lot of discipline and rigor from my academic institutions. I didn't just learn how to solve a problem. I also understood how to ask the right questions that will eventually lead me to find the right answers. So it was very, very important for me to have that discipline, have that strong network of peers around me who were constantly raising the bar for me. On the other hand, I think it's not enough if you just get into a very good academic institution, right? It's also important that one is very self-motivated, passionate about, uh, you know, making it. For me, a lot of it was self-learning. I mean, even today, it's been my focus where I constantly like to teach myself whenever there is a new, let's say, technology, there is a new space that I want to venture into. I think self-learning becomes a lifelong skill. Personally, for me, I think it was a combination of both that has gotten me to where I am today.
Yeah, so that's true, Aditi. I don't think I can agree more on that. It's very important. I think schooling is not just about the school, what you're studying, and your teachers, right? It's also about the peers you make and how they push you to be better in various ways, not just academically, right? So it's also the ecosystem that we sort of discounting now. Whether it's your school, later probably your college, and even the places you work, you're constantly learning from your peers as well, right?
Yeah.
And that's constantly pushing, challenging yourself, growing higher, reaching that potential. So after you graduated from RBCE, you moved to Hyderabad and you were placed at Microsoft. So what was that whole move of going to Hyderabad and starting a tech job at Microsoft, which was your first job as a software engineer?
I think for me personally, that was the very first time I was actually living independently. So there were a lot of things I had to learn on my own, and that made me feel very empowered on the personal front. On the professional front, I think because Microsoft has been one of the top software companies in the world, uh, it really taught me a lot in terms of what it takes to build global products that are very successful. Um, and for me, that established a very strong foundation for what I wanted to do later in life.
Right. So after Microsoft Hyderabad days, you worked for a bit and then you went on to pursue your MBA at Los Angeles at the USC Business School, Marshall School of Business. So my question is a lot of people, right? Pursuing an MBA is a huge investment in time and money. So when you did your MBA, did it really help you to accomplish all that you had set out to do in the US? Was it really worth it?
Let me tell you a little bit about like why even I wanted to do an MBA, right? For me, when I was at Microsoft, I was in an engineering role. What I very quickly realized there is I was more passionate about the what and the why of the product building process as opposed to the how. And at that point, I used to work with a lot of product managers. And I wanted to also become a product manager because I felt like that's a function where I can really thrive. However, I didn't know how to actually make that happen. And back then, after a lot of research that I did, I thought the only way I can be armed with those skills is going to business school. That was the impetus for me to get an MBA, right? To make that career transition. So when I went to business school, I think a lot of that subject matter understanding. For example, I didn't know what a P&L meant. I didn't know what a balance sheet was. I didn't know how you think about analytics for a product, how to do operations within a company. A lot of that I had to get that formal education to get a basic like breadth of like understanding of what it takes to run a company, right? At the same time, it also prepared me to a world after business school. And the way it prepared me was just having a very strong network. And, a lot of people know that USC is known for their network. The Trojans have a very, very strong network within the US and, frankly, across the world. That really helped me a lot, even after business school and even today, frankly. So I think for me, getting an MBA at that point felt like the right decision, and it was probably the right investment that I could do. But today, like, do you have to get an MBA to be a product manager or to get into a different function from engineering? Probably not. Today, what happens is there are a lot of courses that are available online that you could take. You could do like quick short term projects to actually get the same kind of education, probably build the same kind of network that you don't need to do by actually going through a formal business school education.
So, Aditi, you worked across various sectors as a product management leader: Meta, Uber, Stellantis, Walmart. So you've explored very different sectors. You've not limited yourself to, one particular segment, right? Was this a conscious decision to diversify your experience? And did you have to reinvent yourself constantly?
I think it was a conscious decision for me to focus on building products in different industries, whether it's e-commerce at Walmart, or whether it's mobility at Uber and Stellantis now, or at Meta where I focused on social. I felt like every experience I was learning different industries. It constantly kept me on a learning curve, kept me engaged. So for me, what I kept as the common denominator was the product management function. But because I switched different industries, I felt like I was always learning something every day. At the
Right.
same time, for me, it was also what I could take from one industry and push to the other. So I focused a lot on the principles and the tactics from industry A to industry B that I could take. And honestly, that has worked out very well for me. Like, but is it an easy transition to make?
Hmm.
Definitely not, right? Because you need to have people who are willing to take a bet on you when you are making these kind of transitions. So
Exactly.
there's a lot of effort that goes in to actually switch from industries. Like there have been times where, for example, when I had an offer at Walmart, right around that time, I had a couple of other tech companies within marketing tech, which is where I spent a lot of years before that. Uh, asked me to come in, but I intentionally said no to them and took on a brand new sort of industry, which is specifically grocery, not even like commerce, and chose to work from there.
Right. Aditi, I'd like to add to that, right? From a personal experience as a legal counsel in the tech space, I was working at a fintech company, right? So I had a lot of hiring folks reach out to me for fintech roles. And there was a very high chance that I would get limited to that particular segment and sector, right? But the question I have here is, how would you balance that depth versus breadth debate, right? Across sector, you get a breadth of experience. But what about the fact that hiring folks seems to be always asking, what about the depth? What about the expertise in one particular domain or segment? How does that work in the product management? field?
Yeah, I think I always kept my focus, as I said earlier, on honing my product management skills. And whether it's critical thinking, analytical abilities, or strategic thinking, a lot of that is common irrespective of the role you take. The industry, of course, is new for you, so there is a lot of uh, learning curve in getting to understand what happens in the industry. So that requires a lot of prior preparation, going deep in that space. Maybe you take a side project, or maybe you spend a lot of time with industry folks who are in that industry already to get that subject matter expertise. That is the only way you can convince that one, you have some basic sort of understanding of that industry even before you take on the role. And second, you got to convince the hiring manager that you have the motivation and the competency to go and learn that industry very quickly after. So it's also on the hiring manager who's taking that bet on you, right? So how do you convince that person uh, on your drive and motivation? That becomes very critical.
And I was just, thinking aloud and wondering whether there is a difference in mindset in Silicon Valley versus Bangalore or Silicon Valley versus India, right? Whether there is a very set mindset here where they say, hey, I want this particular person with 10, 15 years of domain expertise. But that probably people are more open minded in the Silicon Valley or the US.
That's a great question, actually. You are you're right to a certain extent that I think uh, in the US, what I have seen is people are more uh, willing to take on such bets on people
Right.
because they're focusing on the core craft. I think it's changing in India, but I have certainly heard that many times in recently in India, where a lot of uh, young and mid-career product managers come to me and exactly ask me the same question, where they're like, hey, I don't know how to jump industries. How did you do that? Because hiring managers aren't very open. So it's certainly more prevalent in India, I would say, but slowly I think it's changing.
Okay. So, Aditi, you worked in a bunch of Fortune 500 companies, right? How did you find these opportunities? Did it come from friends? Were these recommendations from people you've known for a long time or worked with? Or did you go through the usual, job portal route? Or did you manage to find this through networking? What were your methods to find these wonderful opportunities?
Yeah. I think I certainly started off my career at you know a big company that helps you get into another big tech company after, because you have that prior sort of stamp, if I may say so, on the resume, right? But in between, there were few years when I worked for a couple of growth stage companies in the Bay Area, where and what I felt at that point was, I need to go back and do product at a large company again. So it wasn't very easy then, right? Even for me, I had to go and network with a lot of people, but I call it more purposeful networking. It's not networking just to get a job. It's almost like building that relationship over many years with different people in the industry. So I certainly did that for some of my roles, and for few other roles, I think a lot of what the work you do in your current role speaks for what you bring to the table. So certainly referrals has been like a very good avenue for me, because somebody who's worked with me will know another hiring manager who will vouch
Right.
for me, which ends up becoming this channel for me to get introduced to someone else. There have been times when I have cold called on people
Hmm.
to actually get that role as well. And there's no shame in doing that. Like even today, if I want to get a role
Hmm.
and I feel like I'm a great fit for that role, that I can really make an impact in that role,
Hmm.
I don't hesitate to actually, write an email or, ask someone for coffee
Hmm.
to get to know more. So I don't think uh, it's one or the other.
Hmm.
It's a combination of that ends up, getting you a given role.
Right. I think I couldn't agree more with that, Aditi. It's good to be great at your work, but sometimes just that is not, if sufficient, and you'll probably have to reach out to people you know, or even cold call people, as you said, right? So, what has been the role of mentors or sponsors in your career journey? Um, how difficult has it been for you as a women product leader?
Mm.
Have there been times when you felt that, hey, I really need mentors here. I really need that support, that extra push. At least I have faced that in my career. And there have been many times that I've kept wondering. And, these questions like, where do you find the mentors? Sometimes, yes, it happens organically. You're working, you have a team, and you end up meeting people from different other teams as well who end up, sort of doing the mentorship for you. But it doesn't come that easily all the time. Sometimes you'll have to put yourself out there or approach people. So, what has been your experience?
Yeah, Kirti, I think mentorship and sponsorship are very important aspects to thriving in one's career. I think sponsorship is even harder to get than mentorship, I would
Exactly.
say.
Right.
But finding mentors, to your question, right? I think uh, a lot of times it's been, the leaders I have worked with. Sometimes it may not be the direct manager
Exactly.
or the org that I am a part of.
Right.
There have been times when maybe I work briefly with a cross-functional leader whom I connect with a lot,
Hmm.
and I build that relationship. I have never really approached someone till now to say that, hey, can you be my mentor? It has always been a organic process for me to find a mentor. For me, it's like finding a friend, right? Like uh, you probably would never go to someone and say that, hey, can you be my friend? Except maybe in your childhood days, but otherwise you just organically connect,
Hmm.
and then that becomes your way of like getting mentorship. And for me, what I also found was that calling somebody a mentor and putting all this burden on them
Hmm.
for various aspects of your career
Hmm.
is a lot for them to take on. So
True.
what has worked for me is, maybe there is aspect A where I need some kind of input,
Hmm.
where I approach person A, and there is another aspect which is could be a completely different topic in my career, where I feel like, hey, this other person could be a better mentor for this aspect.
Hmm.
So I kind of have made this mental map where I choose whom do I go to for what kind of challenges, because I know some of my mentors like strengths. So I kind of pick and choose like when to go to whom. And it's not a lot of pressure on that individual as well, right?
Hmm.
Because you're not always knocking on their doors.
Right.
Only when like something very critical is there that you think they can like help you, you're like asking them.
I think that's a very practical approach, right? Different mentors with different aspects that you're looking at. I think that makes it much more easier for everybody. You're not putting that burden on them and making them feel like, oh God, what have I taken up,
Mm.
sort of a thing. Yeah. So, Aditi, let's move to something that has become the big thing,
Mm.
especially with the AI revolution, right? Where data is everything now. Data is the new oil. And people say that if the product doesn't charge you or if the product
Mm.
is free, you are indeed the product, right? So, especially this is true of the companies you have worked at: Walmart, Uber, Meta. All of these companies use data extensively to power personalization, revenue growth. So, as a product manager, how do you balance these conflicting interests? I say conflicting because, there have been times when you've had these major lawsuits where, especially I think Europe is very sort of fundamental in sort of chasing Meta and couple of other companies where they put these massive fines for violating user rights and privacy. And on the other hand, as product manager, you have to constantly balance that revenue and growth, as well as ensure that the user's rights and privacy and safety and trust is not violated. So, how do you manage this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, so, Kirti, for me, if you really think of it from a first principles perspective, user trust is directly connected to sustainable slash long term revenue of a company. So, it's not growth versus customer trust slash privacy, right? It's not one or the other. For me, they go hand in hand. You have to build keeping in mind privacy from the get-go, or like user trust at the beginning of any product building process has to be like thought through. So for me, I think there are certainly companies or groups where uh, especially if it's an early stage company, uh, they're probably going after like aggressive like growth tactics. And if they are focusing on growth, uh, they're they will very soon realize that there is a if they're not thinking about like user privacy and trust in mind, there is reputational risk, there is brand risk, and sometimes there is financial sort of implications because of that as well. So aggressive growth tactics, while it could give companies instant gratification, I think some of these things that I just explained in terms of the risks could follow after. So the better thing to do for a company is focus on like long term revenue, sustainable growth, right? For sustainable growth, if you work backwards, you have to keep that part of your core product principles, where you're not just focusing on revenue always, you're also focusing on what is uh, what feels right from a customer experience standpoint, and what feels right from a customer expectation standpoint when it comes to data sharing or privacy. It has to be part of your core tenets when you're building a product.
Somehow, I mean, you have the terms of service. If you look at Facebook earlier, now Meta, the terms of service probably runs into more than 20,000 words or more than that. The chances that people will read these terms of service before they log into, before they sign away their rights to Meta is very unlikely. Probably less than 1 or 2% of the people might actually go through. Even as a lawyer, I haven't done that, by the way, right? So, how does that really play out, in reality? Because as a product manager, you would want to sort of ensure that the user privacy and trust and safety is not violated. And you almost see it as something that goes hand in hand with your revenue and growth. In reality, there seems to be a violation of privacy. There seems to be trust issues every now and then, especially with Meta, to be more specific. So, I mean, I think it's more of an observation and thought, right?
Yeah. No, it's interesting you mentioned that.
In fact, I want to ask another follow-up question
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that. So, as a user, right, forget about your product management role for a while and put
Yeah.
on your user hat.
Yeah.
As a user, would you be 100% comfortable using all the products of the companies you've worked at before,
Yeah. I think,
especially in context of how they handle user data?
yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, let me answer your question with Meta, right? The specific thing you mentioned was like the terms and conditions and what you do at sign up. Interestingly, I have built a product that is called Account Center. What it essentially does is whenever there is cross app data sharing that happens, there is an explicit consent we take from the user. So there is a very crisp and concise sort of explanation before, let's say, you do use cases like cross posting between, let's say, WhatsApp and Instagram. And you could also go and change that setting in that privacy or account center that we have built. This did not exist few years ago, and one of the tasks that I had was to build that into place. So it is important to make it more contextual as well. Like, don't just do it at a sign up, but also do it at specific use cases where you explicitly tell the user that, hey, when you're, let's say, cross posting or you're sharing your payment information from app A to app B, we now give a very explicit sort of pop up or an interstitial that tells the user that, look, this is what is going to happen, this is where the data is going to get stored, shared, etc. And that, I think, is really going to reinforce the trust in the user. I mean, to your question around, hey, like, if am I comfortable using the products that I built? Yeah, certainly yes, right? I think over a period of time, it has become, you
No,
know,
we want a real answer. We don't want the diplomatic answer.
no, it is the real answer,
Okay.
right? I think what I've seen is maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, maybe companies didn't consciously think of this. But today, if you see companies like Meta or even Uber, where I worked at, we have a specific divisions. At Meta, there is a specific arm that just focuses on responsible AI, where the focus is primarily like around how do we build like AI products that are safe. There's a very big investment the company has made, like in recent years. Even with Uber, it's almost part of my day-to-day job. We didn't really have a separate like organization like we did like for fraud, etc. But when you think of like user security or trust aspect, it is like if I'm writing a document like today, like we had to have certain aspects that we think through as a product person before we actually put anything into implementation, and it has to go through certain like approvals within the company to actually like get that even into like in the hands of the customer. So I think I think big companies are being more conscious than ever and making it part of their product development life cycle, to make sure that trust and privacy is part of their like core tenets or principles.
I think your point about explicit user consent and notification also for specific aspects, if it's being used for something more specific, I think makes perfect sense. Yeah, I think in the larger context of how Meta became huge, there was an uproar against Meta, especially post Cambridge Analytica, as well as the influence of Facebook, then Facebook, now Meta, on US elections. I think sort of raises very, concerning questions. The kind of role that social media has come to play in the lives of people. This is more just as an observation and thought, more than a question. So let's move to the next question that I have for you. You have worked at Uber and Stellantis, right? Both are very different. I mean, both are dealing with mobility, but Uber is all about disrupting the status quo,
Yeah.
and Stellantis is about this transforming giant, legacy giant, into being fit for the EV and the AI era, right? So, what do you find more challenging? The disruption that the Uber causes, or innovating from outside, or innovating from inside and transforming from inside a legacy giant and making it, take on the challenge of the EV and the AI era.
Yeah, Kirti, I think you made a very interesting observation. It is true that I think for me personally at Uber, a lot of what I learned was about, speed. It's about innovation. It's about how do you get things in the hands of millions of customers very quickly and like learning to iterate very quickly on that. With Stellantis, it's certainly a very different role. Transformation requires a lot of patience. Patience to make sure that you're bringing others along in this journey. Not only you're doing product management, you're having to do a lot of like change management every day, where you got to get others in the organization come with you in terms of uh, whether it's about faster execution or whether it's about thinking about software first before like the mechanical aspects of the car. It's a big change, right? So for me personally, I think it's a lot of um, influence that I have to do on a day-to-day basis at Stellantis. It's a lot of bringing cross-functional stakeholders together and getting them aligned on a strategy. So they both these roles have different challenges, but I feel like transforming is way harder, right? Because it requires a lot more patience uh, than yeah, at least my prior role at Uber. I think for the world, I would say both kinds of companies are necessary. Ones that, like Uber, which are disrupting the space, but also like companies that have been around for a while, like Stellantis. We also need to make sure that they survive and they're going to thrive later on, right? So I think as an industry, we need both.
All right. So let's focus on the craft itself. You've been a product management leader for almost 2 decades now. So if somebody is trying to break into product management, or somebody wants to start a career in product management and they do not know what to do, what would be the first few steps that you would advise them?
Uh, is your question about how to transition to product management?
Yes, yes.
Um, so I think some of the core skills that you need as a product manager is something that they need to focus on gaining, right? For me, there are a few skills like critical thinking ability, analytical skills, just ability to work with a lot of cross-functional people to get things done. uh, and soft skills wise, like I would say, uh, just in having that influence, ability to negotiate, build relationships. I think those become very important. So if anyone wants to transition to product management, I would say they should focus on these building these core skills first. A lot of this you will have to exercise even if you are in another role. Let's say you're in engineering, let's say you're a marketer today. If you're a marketer, maybe you're working with a lot of cross functional partners. That skill will come very handy. If you're an engineer, you understand technology very well, you understand like system design very well, which can come very handy when you become a product manager. So focus on what you can learn in your current function in terms of like the fundamental skills before you actually decide to transition.
Okay. A few observations, right? Something that I noticed, probably people doing in US and maybe to an extent Europe as well, but not in India. I see a lot of non-technical folks. I mean, maybe it's sector specific, depending on the kind of work that you do, but a lot of non-technical folks transitioning into product management. Like maybe somebody has a background in not in engineering, but maybe in humanities or economics. And I've seen a lot of these folks actually becoming product folks in the US, not so much in India. In India, again, you have that, you know, mindset where they want you to have an engineering degree, and then they want you to probably have an MBA or whatever, right? Not so much in the US. So, practically speaking, if, say, somebody in India wants to get into product management and maybe they don't have an MBA, and I think you were mentioning this in the early part of the, podcast as well, where you said that the lot of things that you can do today, learn online, the lot of courses available, which was not there a few years ago, right? So, in from those in those terms, how would you sort of help person practically take the steps to get into product management?
Yeah.
Also, keeping in mind the kind of difference in mindset that's in India and the US. At least I think there is to an extent.
Kirti, I think part of it is an awareness issue. A lot of folks who don't come from the tech industry may not even know that such a function exists. So typically, what happens is if you're working for a tech company, let's say you are an engineer or maybe you're doing a marketing role in a tech company, you might already be working with product managers. So then you are more closer to the function and you are able to do that transition. So I think a lot of it also has to do with going back to these universities and creating this awareness that look, there is a role uh, in the tech space that focuses on the what and the why of product building, not just about coding.
Hmm.
I think that's the first step. I think in India, I would say. And the second step is like once they're aware that hey, something like this exists, then really getting some of that core skill sets that I mentioned earlier, they'll have to start building that. Now, one thing that is a little bit unique to a lot of tech product management roles, not necessarily specific to India, is that you're expected to have some level of tech background. Some roles are very expect you to have a lot of deep technical knowledge, but there are some product roles where a basic level of tech understanding is expected. So in that case, it doesn't hurt if you, let's say, want to get into product, you can go and get some basic tech understanding, where you could go and like you don't need to know how to code, but you could understand how systems are getting designed. If you want, you could take a coding course, but the role doesn't expect you to do that. So the reason I think you're expected to have some tech understanding in product management is you're working with engineering a lot every day. So how do you know that are they building the right thing? You will have to have some sort of a validation mechanism, right? So as long as you're able to work well with engineering, rationalize their sort of inputs to you, and you're able to critically like analyze what they're giving back to you, I think you are in good shape. So that basic level of understanding to better engage with engineering is what you need to build if anyone wants to get into product.
Right. I'll tell you where this question came from, right? So, working as a legal counsel in tech companies meant I worked very closely with product management teams. And that's when I realized, okay, there's a function called, there's a product role, there's a team that's managing the product of the company.
I'm sure.
And and the funny part was I really loved working with the product management teams. They were easily one of my favorite teams to work with. And it didn't happen with one or two companies, right? Across companies, I've thought this particular teams, the product management teams, were very sort of responsive, very good listeners. They were always very collaborative, especially when there were these hiccups with the regulatory ecosystem. They're trying to figure out whether the product is compliant with the particular regulations or law, relevant law. They would always try to find a workaround, and they would sit and discuss. So I found it really, a pleasure to work with the product management teams. And then what happened, what I've noticed is when some teams like marketing or legal functions, or maybe even other business functions, when they start working with product roles, right, there's a interest and curiosity for them to maybe want to explore that role. And what happens is in India, you don't have that route to transition into product role. There are very strict boundaries, which is not the case in in the US. And I think I was watching one of the podcasts, Lenny's product management podcast, where I forgot the name of the person who she's been with Meta for the longest time. Apparently, she's been there for 17, 18 years or so. And she's one of the oldest employees. And she's been working with Zuck as well. And she actually transitioned from a marketing role to a product management role. So I thought, hey, these things happen in Silicon Valley, not so much in India, right?
Yeah.
And I know a couple of people in the marketing function, business function, who've been interested to transition to product roles, but it wasn't that easy for them. In fact, I don't think it was possible in India, at least the setup that I was part of. So yeah, that's just an observation from my side.
Yeah. I mean, you know it better than me, but I should say that at least a couple of people I know who are who were lawyers are now product managers
In India?
Not in India,
Right.
but one of the lawyers I used to work with in one of my prior companies in the US is recently transitioned to product management.
Right.
I think in India slowly, things would change. I don't know of any data points. Maybe it has happened that I'm not aware of. But certainly taking on some side gigs where you could do a project like on your own. Let's say you're a lawyer or a marketer or even an HR. You could take on a side project today and prove yourself, right? That's also a great way for you to show that you can actually be successful in that role.
Right. Correct. So, Aditi, I think you touched upon this lightly in your previous response. You were talking about the kind of skill set that the PMs generally need to have to succeed as a PM, right? So, I just wanted to touch upon your hiring philosophy. You've managed to build teams over the last decade or so, and you've probably done a lot of hiring for your teams. So, what are the kind of qualities that you look for a standout candidate, right? Or people that you would say, hey, I don't want them on my team, but these are the folks I would want on my team.
Yeah. I think for me, uh, as I said earlier, right, some of the core skills like, product sense, uh, somebody who's able to uh, synthesize and internalize qual and quant data together, uh, and having good strategic thinking skills, or at least showing some of those signals that this person can be strategic in the future. Those are like some of the important skills, which I call as like hard skills, right? But at the core, what is needed is ability to think critically, ability to define the right problem to solve, ability to collaborate very well, ability to negotiate very well. I think those are some of the core sort of underlying like skills that are actually needed. And at the end of the day, it's about like how motivated they are. Are they able to teach themselves to become a better version of themselves? I think that is becomes super important. Are they able to take ownership? Are they able to get things done? I think that to me is also extremely important beyond just having these skills.
Say hypothetically somebody doesn't have an engineering degree, they don't have an MBA. Now that you're in Bangalore, they're really curious about product management. They've done some side gigs, taken up courses online. Would you give them a chance? Would you add them for your team?
Absolutely, as long as they're able to prove themselves that they have some of these skills, and if they are able to also show that they have the motivation and drive to teach themselves, at work, because there will be a lot of learning for them at work as well. And I'm more than happy to like teach them. But are they willing to take on the challenge onto themselves? Also is up to them, right?
Right. So I have a question on how AI has impacted product management. AI is a buzzword today everywhere. In every product they just insert the word AI, and most of the time consumers are like, to what extent is AI actually being used, and is it for the better or worse? We don't know, right? So as a product manager, how has AI impacted product management per se, and how do managers stay relevant in the age of AI?
Yeah. I think there are two aspects to AI in product management. The first one is uh, how do you use AI for your day to day work as a product manager, right? And the second aspect is how do you use AI in the products you're building? So let's talk about the first aspect, right? I think it's a given that you should be using AI to be more efficient as a product manager. It probably applies to every function today, but
Right.
since you're asking about product management, when you think of a product development life cycle, what we should be doing is that look at every aspect of product development. Think of like market research or competitor analysis. You could use AI to fast track that process. Think about understanding your user. If you're doing a lot of user research, maybe you got a lot of results. You could use LLMs to help you synthesize that data faster. You could use that to write good product requirement documents. You could use that to analyze the metrics of your product later on. So every part of the life cycle of the product, using it as a companion or a tool to make your life more efficient is becomes very important as a PM. And the reason you want to do that is you want to do way more than you would do before, right? So you could be way more productive in doing the same things. So
Hmm.
you also can focus then on more critical things like building product strategy, building vision documents.
Right.
A lot of that I still think is something you have to do as a PM even today, where you get more time to do that
Right.
by making your life more efficient in these other aspects. Now, this coming to the second part of it, right? Like, how do you use AI in your products? And that has been happening for a while now, whether it's personalization use cases. It could be even things like for fraud detection, there are a lot of models that get built where AI has been used in the past and continues to be used today. So, in your own products, what where do you think AI can be a good solution? Like, just because it's a tool, it's a solution that exists, it doesn't mean that you'll have to throw it into every
Exactly.
product area you're building it in. So you'll have to, again, going by first principles, you'll have to always define, hey, what is the prioritized problem to solve, and then you go and explore a plethora of solutions. And maybe one of those solutions is AI, and you feel that it is optimal to use AI for this particular use case. And that's how you decide that you use AI for your products.
Right. So in the earlier part of your response, right, you were saying that AI is basically an effective tool. It frees up your time so that you can actually focus more on the core functions, right? So what happens here is, I mean, it's just something that I was wondering. It starts to impact every sphere, right? Legal, product management, everything. So I just want to understand from a product leader's perspective. Does it mean that if a lot of these smaller work requirements are taken care of, you may not require a lot of these junior folks working for you? Do you think at some point it'll start impacting that?
I mean, that's one way to look at it.
Okay.
I would say that uh, you will still require a lot of early product managers. Now, I think in the future, having to elevate what they do. Yes, you're probably right that those kind of tasks will be automated. So what will then the early and mid-career product managers do? They need to focus on more the next order of problems to solve, right?
Okay.
So what I would say is the skill sets they will need in the future could be very different from what they are doing today, which is why it's so important to catch up and focus on other aspects that will keep you more relevant in the space. And if you don't, let's say, build those skill sets, you're probably left behind.
Exactly.
But it doesn't mean that you're no longer needed. You're needed as long as you stay relevant. How do you? I want to ask you a question actually. You have been in the legal space for a while. Have you seen a lot of AI being used these days?
So I'll tell you. So I am not a practicing lawyer, right? I don't go to the courts. I don't, actually argue cases before the judge. But I'm a in-house legal counsel, which means a lot of my work is transactional work, and a lot of my work also involves contracts. So contracts has been one area where there's been a lot of development in the AI space where we are getting specialized software targeting contracts, contract automation to an extent. But the softwares that I was exposed to are still not there yet. Yes, they probably help you. In fact, your Microsoft Word is actually the first basic software which has made the life of a lot of contract lawyers a lot easier. I don't know what a lot of us would do without Microsoft Word. And now Google Docs also to a great extent to collaborate. But Microsoft Word, I would say, was the first basic software where you could do a lot of cut, copy, paste, a lot of duplicating the documents, things like that, comparing documents, redlining, all of these with some basic things. But it really saved a lot of time for lawyers. So now what I'm seeing is, for example, there is a legal tech company called Spot Draft. They specifically look at contracts, right? I think they're working, there's a lot of work going on. And from what I see, I was actually surprised, Aditi. I started my legal journey with Infosys, right? And I've been reviewing contracts, these huge documents, sometimes running to hundreds of pages. And I would be like, why is this still not automated? And this is a question I asked, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And even today, we don't have great softwares. They're
Yeah.
still coming up. So, to an extent, I'm actually disappointed with the level of development or the impact of AI in the legal world.
Yeah.
Like even today, I don't think there's a software that I'll rely on 100% and say, okay, my contract work is done. I don't have to recheck it.
I'm sure a lot of the product managers are listening to this right
Yes.
now.
So I think that's actually a very good space to innovate, in the legal tech space. There are a lot of folks coming up in India as well. But yeah, I think there is some improvement happening in the contract space, but we're not there yet.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Makes sense.
So Aditi, you've been working in the Silicon Valley for more than a decade now. So what has been your experience as an Indian woman breaking into the tech ecosystem in Silicon Valley? Were there any kind of challenges that you faced where you had to probably work harder to prove yourself as an Indian woman working in the Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I think for me, luckily, I had a lot of mentors, both male and female, throughout my career. I think that has certainly helped me ease things a little bit, like for me. But that said, I think it's certainly not easy, right? Like there is a lot of, initially I felt like I had to uh, over prepare myself before I go to any take on any work, or whether I go and do certain interviews or anything of that sort, right? I always felt like I had to over prepare to compensate for any biases that might exist in the in the environment. But after some time, I kind of realized that, hey, like I'll just go and do my best. I don't need to overcompensate for things, and let's see like how things go. Um, it's probably true that there are some biases, but at the end of the day, it really is about your own confidence, your own competence. So I focused on what is under my control, which is honing on those two aspects, and just left the rest to happen by itself.
Now that you have transitioned back to Bangalore from Silicon Valley, what kind of similarities or differences do you find in the work culture, Silicon Valley, Bangalore? Also, your own experience as a woman in tech. If you could share your observations, right? Is Bangalore in any way better than Silicon Valley, or does Silicon Valley operate on much higher standards, just in terms of sheer talent or the kind of experiences you would get working with the kind of people that it attracts globally? What is some of your observations on this, and more specifically, your experience as a woman in tech, right?
Yeah, I think for me, it hasn't been that long that I have moved back to Bangalore. So it's really early observations is what I would caveat. Um, for me, I think the big difference is in terms of ecosystem maturity, right? In the Silicon Valley, I think you know the companies have existed for a while. A lot of this tech culture has been there for a longer period than Bangalore. There have been many companies that have been born there and have done, gone to become multinational companies.
Right.
So I think, to me, the root of it, I think that is what is contributing to a lot of the product culture that I see there, right? So there is a lot more innovation that has been happening for a longer period of time. So when you think of product management, I think that is also a relatively more mature function there. And hence, a lot of the bar I feel is like very different. I think when it comes to India, or specifically Bangalore, it is slowly getting there, right? It is catching up in terms of uh, the product management culture. When I left India about 18, 19 years ago, things weren't as there weren't that many product managers, and there weren't that many products that were born out of India.
Right.
I wouldn't say we are still on par right now in India compared to the valley,
Right.
but it's certainly the trajectory is getting there, right? So for me, personally, like I feel like the next 15-20 years is really about India. It's really about uh, you know bringing even stronger product culture here, building some even more amazing products here. And I think with COVID, we all realized that these geographical boundaries are got blurred for us at that point. Like personally, for me right now, I work for a global company.
Correct.
I don't just manage a team that sits out of India. I have teams that are sitting across the world.
Right.
And I'm day in and day out, working with PMs on my team who are sitting in Europe, who are sitting in US, and some of the other countries as well. So I think like how do I bring them all together into like and set that culture is the challenge I'm facing today, because every PM sitting in different like regions, or they may have worked in different kinds of companies, and they may come from different cultural backgrounds. How do I bring them together to build a cohesive product org is the challenge I am facing today. And of course, like I want more women on my team, right? I've always wanted that, because especially when you're thinking about like the product building process, I think it is very important to have diversity in who is defining your product, because your end product also accounts for the diversity in the users, right? So as much as possible, I try to bring on more, have that diversity, not just by gender, but also in terms of backgrounds, industries, experience. You want to have a blend of it, because you can create that dialogue and culture within the team where people are challenging and questioning each other, coming up with new ideas. All that eventually will lead to like innovation.
Right.
So I'm trying to do that consciously. I think there is still it's in progress.
Right. So I have a follow-up question on Bangalore and Silicon Valley, Aditi. I think you kind of partially touched upon it while you were responding. So, when you look at Silicon Valley and Bangalore, the talent and energies here is undeniable. There are many great engineers here as well, but we've not seen a single global consumer product come out of in India, at least not anything that I'm using currently, right? Why do you think this is the case? What do you think is missing in the Indian product ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it's you're probably true that there are not that many companies that have been born out of India, which have now gone to become global companies. But there are a handful of them in the industry that have done that. Maybe not in the large scale consumer tech space. I think my personal opinion is that till now, a lot of that has been about building for India. Maybe it's really about taking a successful product in a different country and having that be built for the large consumer base we have in India, whether we are talking about like Flipkart or Myntra or Swiggy or Zomato. It's been about that till now, but that doesn't mean that that's where we will end. I feel very hopeful that with in the coming like decade, there will be a lot of products that are born in India, but they have gone on to become bigger products. Part of it also I feel is in terms of the investment sort of that comes in, right? There are some examples where I've seen that maybe the company was started in India, but in terms of getting funding and in terms of bringing their next level of growth, they ended up moving to a different country, maybe the Valley or somewhere else, where they got that extra investment that they are looking for, and hence they're now probably being branded as a Silicon Valley company. But it's possible that they actually, I know some examples where they were actually born out of India. Also, like I see a lot of leaders who are actually born and brought up in India, and
Correct.
maybe they started like
I think that's a perfect brain
innovating,
drain question, right?
and but I think slowly things are changing, right?
Mm.
With AI coming into play,
Mm.
I don't think it is enough for us in India to think just about a copy paste kind of a solution.
Mm.
Outsourcing, of course, is long gone.
Mm.
We really, really have to start innovating,
Mm.
innovating at like a global level. Else, I don't think we will be successful
Mm.
as a industry within here.
So, Aditi, let me ask you a question on something where there isn't much transparency around. And I want to understand your experience regarding that, right? So, I have never been a very good salary negotiator. Over the years, yes, my skills have definitely improved. But in the Indian in-house legal corporate ecosystem, there isn't much transparency. So many times you don't know what the salary range is, or what where you can push, because the hiring teams will say, "Hey, this is the allocated budget. We'll have to stick to it," and you'll have to go take their word for it, right? So many times there have been when I've taken a 30-40% cut from my previous salary simply because I was in a tough spot and I really wanted that opportunity. So I was just trying to understand what has been your experience negotiating salary in India and the US, and what are some of the do's and don'ts that you would recommend?
Yeah. No, that's a very important question. Um, I think for me, my advice would be always negotiate.
Hmm.
The worst thing that can happen to you is they would say no,
Right.
but at least you tried,
Correct.
right? You can always go back to what they were offering you and take that. In terms of some of the tactics, I think the first thing would be, understanding what sort of the market, uh, rates that are there, what are the ranges that are out there in the market. Of course, it's harder in India where you have to
Hmm.
build your own database
Correct.
in some kind of functions.
Right.
In other countries, I've seen that there are web portals which easily give you that range. The second thing is, I think, separate out like emotion when you're negotiating. I feel like a lot of women like tend to uh, judge themselves or tend to associate compensation with what they feel they are worth.
Hmm.
I think you got to be very objective about this process.
Hmm.
It's a business. It's treat it like a business transaction. It
Hmm.
it has nothing to do with your own competency or how you should feel about yourself.
Hmm.
I think those would be my advice.
Okay. I think still a long way for a lot of us to work on our negotiating skills. And I wish that that we'll kind of eventually build a database in India where things are much more transparent, whether it's legal or product management, where the corporate world will have more transparency with respect to salaries. Anyway, that's something that hopefully will happen in the near future. So, one last question before we move to the rapid fire round. You're a mother of two, and you've also been you are the VP of Stellantis currently. So, how do you balance the demands of work with the realities of motherhood? Right? Have there been times when you've raised your hand and said, "Hey, I can't do both"?
Uh, yeah, I think there's no such thing as
Yes.
balance. It's always about trade offs.
Hmm.
And just like what anyone does as a product manager,
Hmm.
a lot of it is uh, about aggressive prioritization.
Hmm.
So, there are times when, I can't. Uh, I have to like trade off something on the personal front to meet some professional expectation and vice versa, right? So it is just about being okay about it and not feel too guilty about having to not do something for the sake of the other.
Hmm.
I think personally for me, I have like a very good support system.
Hmm.
I think my spouse and my family is very supportive in making sure that I can have a very successful career. I think
Hmm.
that's to do with a lot of what I do is because of that. And also I take a lot of time out for myself. You know it that
Hmm.
I personally have taken some breaks where
Yeah.
it's not even to care for the family or to do any kind of work. It's really about uh, you know rejuvenating myself so I can go back to my professional or personal life to be the best version of myself. I think it's so important for you after a certain period of time to just invest in self-care.
Right. Aditi, I want to tie this response to a previous question I'd asked, right? And you had mentioned about managing global teams. So when you're managing global teams and you have two kids at home, and you're having calls scheduled at 11 in the night or 12 in the night, which you've been telling me a couple of times because I was trying to reach you and you were like, I'm on calls, So when you're managing teams across the world, and sometimes you really don't get the schedules that you ask for, and there's something I've also seen, I don't know if it's still something that impacts India. At least when I was working in Infosys, right, we Indians were the most, accommodating. We would take calls at 11 in the night, 12 in the night. I would never have these US folks doing that for us. A lot of people have mentioned this. Is it something that you have observed in your experience? And also, when it's so demanding, how do you manage kids at home and then you have this call that's waiting for you?
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective like that you're bringing in. For me, I think unless you ask for it,
Hmm.
you won't get it. So you will have to start drawing these boundaries. So for example, if you're doing some couple of late nights at work,
Hmm.
then you might have to start your day a little bit late, just to care for your family. Maybe you make breakfast if you couldn't sit with them for dinner the
Right.
previous night.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out mechanisms where you're very assertive at your workplace and making sure that you're coming back and like handling your family as well. So a lot of it, I think, is saying no sometimes. It's not, you cannot always keep doing that and make it a habit, right? If there is a real need for you to be there, you have to be there. And if somebody else can represent you, which can happen a lot of times, it's okay for you to feel let go and have somebody on your team drive that.
Designated, yeah.
But of course, there's some meetings where you have to be there. Then there is no other alternative.
Right.
So it's a little bit of also, one is like saying no, but also be willing to negotiate a little bit, or maybe like delegating it to someone else if you can, if you're in that kind of a role,
Right.
to make sure that you're balancing.
Right. So we have had some really fun travel experiences. We went to Europe last year, Vienna, Budapest, Prague. So I know you love traveling. So what does a perfect off day look like for Aditi?
Yeah, I think the perfect off day is no phones, no meetings, just having a very relaxed brunch with family, and catch a nice nap, and just maybe drink some good coffee in the evening and just go to bed early.
I hope you get to experience more of these days. Anyway, so let's move to the rapid fire round. Don't take too much time. Short,
Okay.
quick responses. Okay.
Okay,
The first one: Bangalore or Silicon Valley?
tough choice, both.
Really? No, you have to choose one.
I think professionally, maybe still Silicon Valley, maybe because I've spent too much time there, and then personally maybe Bangalore because that's where I was born.
Okay. One thing Silicon Valley has that Bangalore doesn't.
Uh, I think the ecosystem maturity that I
I
called.
think you kind of responded to that earlier as well. One thing Bangalore has that Silicon Valley doesn't.
I think a lot of young talent and grit.
Okay. Okay. Favorite comfort food?
I would say bisibele bath.
Oh, okay. That's a nice Kannada specific food, Karnataka specific food. One product you wish you had built?
There are many. I would
Okay,
say
name them all.
I would say Slack, Spotify,
Yeah, Spotify is. Yeah.
Airbnb.
Okay. One book or podcast that impacted you the most in recent times?
I would say Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Okay. The last city you visited that you absolutely loved?
Venice.
Oh, cool. One place you would go back in the world, you would go back in a heartbeat.
Tokyo.
Really? Okay. That's one place I really want to visit. I haven't been there, so Japan is on my list.
Yeah, it's a lovely place.
If you weren't a product leader, what would you be?
I'd probably be a professor or a writer.
Really? Okay. I think you would make a great professor.
Hmm.
If you had to bet on one AI leader, Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, or Elon Musk, who would it be and why?
Why is Sam Altman not in the list?
Okay, we can add him as well. Let me
but
add him.
but honestly, I think there will be many more that we don't know of today.
No, currently,
in the next decade.
take these three plus Sam Altman as well. So, yeah.
I would say Sam Altman.
What's the one app you use every single day that you can't live without?
WhatsApp, just to be closer to my family.
Yeah, I think WhatsApp is.
Sometimes even work.
I think a lot of work in the corporate world in India actually happens through WhatsApp. I don't know what we would do without it, seriously.
Yeah.
One mantra or life philosophy you swear by?
Take it easy. Don't be too hard on yourself.
So we've come to the end of the conversation, Aditi. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your insight. I wish you the very best in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kirti, for having me. This was really, really interesting experience for me. I enjoyed being here. Thank you.